In 8th grade, my class was asked to write reports on our grandparents' lives. This is what I wrote in 2008 about Grandma Pat, along with some pictures that capture her spirit.
My grandma was born in Independence, Missouri in 1937. Her family consisted of her parents, her older brother Don, and her younger sister Mary. Pat's father, LC, had a construction job that forced them to move a lot. Just a few of the places they lived were Texas, Illinois, Arkansas, Georgia, Delaware, Tennessee, and South Carolina. They never lived in the same place for more than 3 years at a time. Pat was just a child living in Seabrook, Texas, while LC was working in South America. He left the kids and their mother to take care of themselves. While he was gone, Pat, her mother, and her siblings experienced a major hurricane. It was classified as a Category 4 storm with 135-mile-an-hour winds. This was in 1949 before tropical storms were named. Pat's mother, Ruth, wanted to stay in their home and moved all the furniture to the upstairs portion of the house by herself. However, the landlord forced them to leave the house for their own safety. Pat's mother reluctantly agreed, and they left their house for Houston. When they returned, they found the hurricane had left the house flooded with 6 feet of water. There was not much damage done, and thankfully nobody died. Living during the aftermath of the Great Depression, Pat and her siblings had to get creative to find fun things to do. My grandma and her brother used to make sailboats out of scraps of inner tubes, bamboo shoots, and sheets. She tells me every boat they ever made sunk, but it was a great way to pass the time. Also, because her dad wasn't home much, Pat had more responsibilities than the average kid. In fact, she got her first job when she was in 5th grade. She used to shuck shrimp, which was delivered on large ships to a dock close to her home. She was paid 3 cents a pound for all the shrimp she shucked. Another job she worked was picking cotton. When she was a little girl, she picked cotton until the bag she carried got too heavy, and then she gave it to her brother. What she didn't realize is that her brother was getting paid for all the cotton she picked. During World War II, Pat's dad took part in creating atomic bombs. The Gibsons lived in Tennessee at the time. She distinctly remembers the obnoxious sirens going off, signaling for everyone to black out their windows to practice in case foreign planes flew over their town. During this time, my grandma's family had to ration their provisions. Pat tells me that the way rations worked was the family had to choose what to do without. As a result, they had to be creative to get the resources they needed. For example, if they used their rations for meat, they had to do without soap or toothpaste. So Pat's family used their rations for meat and then made soap out of the fat from bacon and other meat, and they brushed their teeth with baking soda. Even though it appears the Gibson family had a hardscrabble life, they were really more of a middle-class family. This was partly because my great-grandmother, Emma Peters, was financially very good to them. Her husband was a doctor in Mount Sterling, Illinois, and lived comfortably. However, because Pat's family moved so much, it was hard to establish many traditions. One of their only customs was that every single summer they would go visit their grandparents in Mount Sterling. No matter where they lived, they would always find a way to get there. This tradition was significant because my grandma and her siblings would have lots of fun playing with their cousin Carol, who lived with their grandparents. Their grandparents lived on a farm that wasn't very high tech. The toilet there was an outhouse. Everyone loved the experience anyway, away from the city, for a while to enjoy each other's presence. Pat spent her high school years in Aiken, South Carolina. She eventually came to call it home because her family lived there the longest. Her family moved again right after she began college, but by then she had moved out of the house. My grandma's favorite time was when Dwight Eisenhower was president just after the Korean War. This might be due to the fact that she went to college and met the love of her life during that time. My grandma met her husband, Bill, in South Carolina. I love hearing the story of how they met. In 1959, Bill and a good friend were working at a nuclear power plant near Aiken. One day, Bill had a date with Pat's friend Madeline. Madeline canceled their date because Pat had asked her to go to a party with her. While at the party, Madeline saw Bill and tried to hide. But when Bill saw them, he immediately ignored Madeline and asked my grandma to dance. They danced and had 5 more dates after that. Bill proposed to her on their 6th date on the back of his friend's car. Bill and Pat were married in August of 1960 at St. Mary's Church in Aiken, just after Bill graduated from Notre Dame University. The first years of their marriage were tough. At the time, they were living in Indiana while Bill was attending graduate school at Purdue. Pat worked as a surgical nurse while Bill was in school. Money was tight, and often Pat's paycheck couldn't cover their expenses. In order to pay the bills, both my grandparents sold their own blood. Blood money, as my grandma jokingly calls it, went for $25 a pint. They had many financial problems, but they always found creative ways to make ends meet. For example, one of their friends worked at a radio station, so for entertainment, they got expired movie passes from that friend and changed the dates so they could see a movie. Also, Pat's grandmother sent care packages to them every once in a while. Each package lasted them about a week, and the couple was really grateful to her. One of the most exciting things that happened to my grandma was raising a family. My dad, Bill, who was named after my grandpa Bill, was born in 1965. His brother, David, was born in 1968. They got along about as well as my sister and me, which isn't well at all. Grandma stresses that they made life interesting, busy, and lots of times challenging. Grandma loves her 2 sons very much, and her grandchildren even more. Grandma Pat pushed the boys to sing in the lacrosse boys choir from ages 10 to 13 before their voices changed. She was a dedicated mother who raised her children with a lot of love and a lot of discipline. My dad always tells the story about Grandma, Grandpa, and the wooden spoon. Whenever my dad and his brother were misbehaving, my grandparents would chase them around the house with a wooden spoon. If they were caught, they were spanked. My dad loves repeating this story whenever my sister and I complain that he is being too harsh on us. The boys worked their way through school, and Pat and Grandpa Bill put my dad through 16 years of Catholic education and my uncle through 8. They both went to Catholic colleges. My dad attended Marquette University, and my uncle David went to Notre Dame University, my grandpa's alma mater. Pat has always been interested in fashion. While my dad was in high school, she decided to start up a high-end shoe store in her town with 2 of her closest friends. It was called the Gibson Girl. The shoe shop was named after Charles Dana Gibson, a famous fashion illustrator from the 19th century. Gibson is also my grandma's maiden name. It was located between a restaurant and a bar in downtown La Crosse. My dad worked as a bartender at the bar next to her shop during his college summers. When Pat was in her 40s, she was diagnosed with a case of breast cancer. She is a proud survivor, and her treatments did not slow her down. Through her cancer, she even continued to run the store. The shop was eventually closed because the Roths had to move to Connecticut, but part of it will always remain with my grandma. Fashion is what Grandma Pat is all about. To this day, Grandma Pat still loves fashion and shoes. I always enjoy her company no matter what, and we have always had an amazing relationship from the beginning. I respect her even more now that I know what she has been through and what she has accomplished to get this far. She's a very strong woman and a great role model. She will always be my goofy, fashion-forward, adventure-loving Grandma Pat. I hope when I'm her age, I can look back at my achievements and be as successful as she. I love my grandma very much, and I had lots of fun learning about her background. I think she did too.